All legitimate rights, if you notice, have one thing in common. They are rights to action, not to rewards from other people. The American rights, the original American rights, impose no obligations on other people, merely the negative obligation to leave you alone. The system guarantees you the chance to work for what you want, not to be given it without effort by somebody else. The right to life, for example, does not mean that your neighbors have to feed and clothe you. It means that you have the right to earn your food and clothes yourself, if necessary, by a very difficult struggle, and that no one can forcibly stop your struggle for these things or steal them from you once you have achieved them. In other words, you have the right to act and to keep the results of your action, the products you make, to keep them or trade them with others if you wish. But you have no right to the actions or products of others except on terms to which they voluntarily agree. To take one more example, the right to the pursuit of happiness is precisely that, the right to the pursuit, to a certain type of action on your part, not to any guarantee that other people will make you happy or even try to do so. Otherwise, there would be no liberty in the country. If your mere desire for something, anything, imposes a duty on other people to satisfy you, then they have no choice in their lives, no say in what they do. They have no liberty. They cannot pursue their happiness. Your so-called right to happiness at their expense means that they become rightless serfs. In other words, your slaves. Your right to anything, anything at all, at the expense of others means that they thereby become rightless. And that is why the United States system defines rights as it does, as strictly the rights to action. This was the approach that made the United States the first free country in all world history. And soon afterwards, as a result, the greatest country in history, the richest and most powerful. It became the most powerful because its view of rights made it the most moral. It was the country of individualism and personal independence.
Did you get that? That was my man Leonard Peikoff explaining what rights are, and I want you to keep this in mind as we check out a clip from a recent Secular Talk video. Let's check it out.
How are you going to pay for it is now officially the dumbest response to Medicare for All, because it's been sufficiently answered about 1,000 times. The answer is we pay for it by eliminating the private taxes that you're paying to rapacious mafia-like for-profit middlemen and raising the public taxes. But you still save money. Understand? So when we eliminate the private tax and we raise the public tax, you still save money because the private tax was more than the public tax will be. Full stop. So when you say how are you going to pay for it, no. The real question is, how are you going to pay for the status quo? Because that is unaffordable. So I'm so sick of that shit. And then notice, see, this is how you know they're ideologically committed. George Stephanopoulos with his framing in the middle there. He's like, okay, I know you want to eliminate premiums, copays, deductibles. And I know it's going to save everybody money, but will middle-class taxes go up? You know why they do that, right? They just want that soundbite because they want to take it out of context. Will middle-class taxes go up? And then if you say yes, that's it. They won't give the rest of the context, and 1,000 articles will be written that'll say, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, yes, I want to raise middle-class taxes. These people are smear merchants, guys. They have an ideology, and they're pushing for it. So it's utterly disgusting because, and this is why, by the way, I favor my framing on this issue, because it's the only way to get out of that trick. That's the only way. When they ask you, are you going to raise middle-class taxes? You go, no, I'm not. What do you mean? How are you going to pay for Medicare for all? Well, if I eliminate the private taxes, which are more, and I raise the public taxes, I'm saving you money. So I'm not raising taxes because I'm eliminating the private taxes.
All right, folks, let's discuss this concept that Kyle is using, the concept private tax. The concept private tax is an anti-concept. And if you recall my recent video about personal property, An anti-concept is a rationally unusable concept that's meant to obliterate or replace a legitimate concept. In this case, private tax is meant to obliterate the concept of force, particularly force between human beings. After all, a tax is a compulsory payment to a government entity, backed up by the assurance that force will be used unless the money is handed over.
You know what's fucked up about taxes? You don't even pay taxes. They take tax. You get your check, money, go.
By introducing the concept private tax, Kyle is conflating the compulsory with the voluntary. And it's not like compulsory and voluntary are similar concepts. They're literally opposites. To Kyle, buying a product to help sustain life is exactly the same as the state forcefully siphoning money from your paycheck and threatening you with imprisonment for avoiding confiscations. Additionally, Kyle conflates the initiation of force from human beings with metaphysically given hazards. By metaphysically, I mean things that simply exist in reality that may threaten your existence. To Kyle, the threat of an infection is the exact same as the threat of an armed robber. Kyle implies that paying for a product like private health insurance is a tax because without health insurance or any means to pay for one's own health care in the case of a medical emergency, then people could and would die as a result. So paying a medical professional to treat an infection versus paying an armed robber to put his gun away and leave you alone? Same thing according to Kyle. The only problem for Kyle here is that the two scenarios are absolutely different. The armed robber has the choice to act civilized. The robber has the choice to not violate your rights, and in a political context, the law says that if the robber chooses to rob, then they are now a threat that needs to be neutralized and tried in a court of law because, after all, human beings have rights and should be treated as innocent until proven guilty. Bacteria, on the other hand, does not have the choice that the armed robber has. Bacteria are just mindless microorganisms that just eat away at whatever the hell they eat away at.
We will make you sad.
Same goes with viruses, sharks, tornadoes, grizzly bears, hurricanes, gravity, wildfires, and any other possible threat that cannot be reasoned into behaving in a civilized society. What Kyle is doing here is actually an inversion of what Ayn Rand noted, that dealing with men by means of force is as moral and practical as dealing with gravity by persuasion. Now, one may ask,
but Kirk, if a doctor has the means of treating an infection but chooses not to because of money, then aren't they essentially the same as an armed robber making you give them money to avoid death?
Absolutely fucking not.
the doctor is not threatening your life in this situation. The bacteria are threatening your life. Treatments of infections, diseases, and wounds do not exist in a void and need to be discovered by individuals using their mind and then produced by individuals using their mind. It's not like man was always aware of antibiotics and how to turn antibiotics into pill form and then knowing when to prescribe the antibiotics. No! Additionally, in the context of the robber comparison, the doctor is performing a service in exchange for money, whereas the robber is offering you nothing in return for your money. The robber owes you the negative right to leave you alone, just as you owe your doctor the negative right to leave them alone. Saying that the doctor or the treatment manufacturer owe you their work free of compensation is to say that they are essentially your slave. Saying that taxes need to be imposed on the rest of society to compensate the doctor on your behalf is saying that society is your slave and therefore responsible for your existence. Only an entitled would-be philosopher king dictator like Kyle Kulinski would believe in such ridiculous nonsense. And I have not even mentioned the logical conclusions of Kyle's ridiculous premise. If force entails every action necessary to avoid death, then every expenditure on sustaining life is a private tax. Buying medicine to treat an infection, private tax. Buying food to avoid starving to death, private tax. Buying a bottle of clean water to avoid dehydration during a hike in the desert, private tax. Buying coal or gas or lumber to heat your home to avoid hypothermia, private tax. Paying for a gym membership to build your muscles and exercise vital organs, private tax. Purchasing cleaning supplies to clean your bathroom and kitchen as a means of preventing germs and bacteria and mold from spreading, private tax. Buying self-help books to help focus your mind on living a long and healthy life, private tax. Does this also apply to biological functions? Is merely breathing considered a biological tax? How about digesting food? Is that considered some sort of tax? What the hell would not be considered a tax under Kyle's ridiculous definition?
You know, that's a really good question.
With Kyle's new concept, he gets to drop the context that forces behind every tax scheme, while implying that every expense on sustaining life is somehow forced. By this logic, merely existing is tyranny. Anti-concepts are quite common amongst people who seek to sell you a cow turd sundae by saying that the ingredients came from a dairy farm. Andrew Yang explicitly admits to creating anti-concepts when he describes his decision to call his wealth redistribution scheme a proposal to give every American adult $1,000 a month, the freedom dividend.
The universal basic income, the freedom dividend, as you call it. You say it tested better with Republicans.
With the word freedom in it, yes.
Did you do, what is it? You did actual, test, focus groups?
Yeah, well, it was market sampling and online. So we tested a bunch of names. Social Security for all, universal basic income, obviously. Opportunity dividend, prosperity dividend, freedom dividend was the clear winner.
It's a beautiful American phrase. I could see the flag waving in the wind and the bald eagle screaming the freedom dividend.
Yeah, who could be against the freedom dividend?
Yeah,
You'd have to be some kind of jerk.
What freedom does the freedom dividend guarantee exactly? Freedom from personal responsibility? Too bad there's no such thing. Freedom in the political context means freedom from physical coercion. Yang's freedom dividend certainly does not mean freedom from legalized robbery, given that new taxes will be imposed to finance the freedom dividend program. And what about the dividend aspect? A dividend is a reward that's paid to investors who buy stocks or bonds or index funds or mutual funds or other types of investment. Investors whom otherwise would not risk their money if there was not a possibility of return on their investment. Andrew Yang's freedom dividend is a reward for what exactly? Existing? Talk about a participation trophy. And yes, Andrew Yang actually sees the United States as this large corporation with all 300 million Americans being equal shareholders, where you don't need to buy ownership stake or risk any money to receive a reward. Nope. All you have to do is pop out of your mama's womb and make it to age 18 to get a return on an investment that you did not make. Wow, what a guy that Andrew Yang is, thinking he can just invent new bullshit terms to fool us dumb Americans into thinking that his universal basic income program is anything but another forced wealth redistribution scheme. Freedom dividend sure is an anti-concept if I've ever heard one.